So, welcome to the first episode of something we're doing called Rantvertising. I'm Jeff, one of the co-founders of Abacus.
And I'm Ian. I'm the COO at Abacus. What do I do, Jeff?
And we're gonna take 10 minutes of your time, and we are going to rant about topics in marketing and advertising that are on our mind and that are keeping us up at night. And the first topic we want to rant about is
DTC. So it's a word that gets thrown around a lot, and I think it means a lot of different things to a lot of different people. And often when I get started talking about this topic, I find myself needing to clarify what constitutes a DTC or not a DTC brand. And, some obvious ones come to mind, like Casper or Away or Allbirds. But then there's all these brands that can kind of fit in this gray area. And it's like, are they DTC? Are they e-commerce? Are they not? So, when you're reading articles or having debates with people about, the merits for or against DTC brands, if you're not starting with the same definition point, then you're kind of talking in fucking circles because you're not even talking about the same thing. So something that pisses me off and I like to rant about is I don't even know what people mean sometimes when they're talking about DTC. And, I think that that's something that needs to be discussed.
So yeah, I've thought a lot about what the difference is between D2C and e-commerce, as I've met a lot of companies on both sides of D2C and e-commerce, and I've come to the conclusion that D2C is a state of mind and a mindset more than it is a type of company. So I believe that e-commerce is a channel. It's a channel just like selling through stores or through anywhere else. And if e-commerce is one of many channels that you sell through, then it's e-commerce. If it's the main channel you sell through and the channel to which you will do all the sacrifices to benefit, then you're more of a D2C company because all of your sacrifices, all of your choices are going to go towards benefiting this direct e-commerce channel.
So then I guess my kind of add-on or rebuttal to that would be, when I think about DTC, I think it's about owning the relationship with the customer as opposed to just wanting to sell products. And if you're not a DTC brand, your concern is moving product above all else, and you're not really focused on necessarily retaining that relationship or anything. You just want to push product. Whereas a DTC brand is going to prioritize the things that build in a more sticky relationship with the customer or the consumer. And so that's kind of where I differentiate between the two, and where my head goes. And then I think when you're thinking about that, then I think that you could actually have a situation where there are DTC brands that aren't even necessarily e-commerce companies. But they're just obsessed with that relationship with the customer. And then that kind of opens up the playing field in an interesting way.
Yeah, I totally agree. I was speaking to a company who will remain nameless, and they sold through their website. They had e-commerce. And whenever I went to suggest to them that we could really, really ramp up their e-commerce, there was resistance. And it took me a while to figure out what the resistance was. I finally asked what the resistance was, and they said they can't really promote direct because it would aggravate a retailer who not only carries their brand, but carries dozens, if not hundreds of competitor brands. So they're willing to sacrifice their e-commerce for their legacy channel. They are not a D2C. They are a company that just happens to offer e-commerce as one of their categories. And I think that's a problem because that the retailer doesn't feel the same way about the brand. The retailer isn't emboldened to the brand the same way the brand is emboldened to the retailer.
Yep. I've seen this in my time as well. And I think, what I've brought it back to is I think it's two things. It's a combination of laziness and fear. And now that might sound inflammatory, or incendiary to a degree. But I think, when you're moving from a world where you make a half a dozen multi-million-dollar deals a year to a world where you need to sell to thousands or hundreds of thousands or millions of people, I think that that's a lot more complex, potentially, can seem a lot more work, and it can be, tempting to just stick with all I got to do is sign 12 deals a year and I'm good. It's a little bit more predictable, all these kinds of things. But, the benefit of having that direct relationship with the consumer could outweigh all of that. And I think that it's the fear. And so then are you in a place where, like, do you really believe in the product that you're selling? Do you really believe people will love it enough to have a relationship with you to begin with? And then if you really do believe that, then maybe you'd be more willing to put in the effort, the time, and the work to start building that one-to-one relationship, as opposed to just leaning back on those like 12 deals you make a year.
So the lack of one-to-one relationship that the incumbents have with their customers, if you think about the big brand CPGs and stuff, and the fact that they don't know what gets sold where in real time, and they don't know who the customer is, they're the ones that are leaving the door open to the DTCs. So they're almost creating their own funeral by refusing to cannibalize themselves, which is an age-old strategic error. They open the door and leave hearts and minds available to be won by D2Cs. D2Cs market in a different way too. They're human, they're transparent, they're visible, they're open. They're willing to change their tone depending on what the channel is. They're willing to try more things. They don't take themselves too seriously. They let some fun and personality come through in their communications. When you think about it, that's why Endy came along and did so well, because they were able to maintain these direct conversations with the client, whereas other mattress companies were just shipping to a distribution center. And I think that's a really exciting opportunity for DTCs moving forward, is that the incumbents can't really compete.
Yeah, I mean, I think that there's incumbents that are fun and don't take themselves too seriously either. So it's definitely not strictly a territory of DTC only. But I think that, as younger, newer players in the game trying to punch above their body weight, they need to be that way by nature to make some noise and get some attention. Where I think it gets really interesting though is on that side of things. I think it's like wanting to build that relationship and do commerce in a new way, like forward thinking as opposed to backwards looking. Like, we have these historical relationships, these historical sales models, these historical things that have always worked, quote unquote, and there's a barrier to moving forward, right? You think of any big CPG company, it's like, yes, you can sell through Walmart and you can sell through whatever bricks and mortars, but to your point you mentioned earlier, whether it's Sephora putting you against every other makeup company on the planet together, and then basically like dictating terms to a degree, right? Where I think the interesting piece is for legacy brands to step boldly into DTC is like, aren't you tired of getting pushed around and getting dictated to a degree? You know what I mean? Like, don't you want to kind of reclaim a bit of those terms? I think the best brands probably have more leverage, but I'd say it's probably the latter more often, where the retailers are dictating terms and they're demanding a lot more from you maybe than you would have originally wanted to give or give up. You have to make a lot more compromises with how you would present your brand and all that kind of stuff. So, yeah, I think about it from like a point of control. Like, if you can move into this new world and control all of that, like, why wouldn't you want to do that? That's where
we read an article lately that talked about how COVID and everything is going to kill D2Cs. And I think what they really were talking about was venture-backed D2Cs. The difference between a venture-backed D2C and a D2C, theoretically, is that venture-backed D2Cs can afford to spend money on acquisition, and they don't care about the relationship between their customer acquisition cost and their lifetime value. And as a result, they lose money for sale. Casper famously lost money per sale. But I don't think that that's a brush that needs to paint to everyone. I mean, look at malls today. There's no one in them. Look at retail stores. They're saying 30, 40, 50% of them are going to close as a result of COVID and quarantine. So this is an opportunity for D2Cs. Everyone is sitting at home. They're on their phone. Of course, spending's down, and spending is going to continue to be down for a while. But it's hard to look at D2Cs and bricks and mortar right now and decide that D2Cs are at a decided advantage. Customer acquisition cost is high, but if we're going to stop advertising because customer acquisition cost is high, then that's the death of advertising. There won't be any more advertising. So I believe there's people that can get customer acquisition low enough by having good advertising, good marketing, and a great product.
Yeah, I mean, like my response to that article when I read it was kind of just like, duh, like, if you're a bad company that doesn't have profit margin built in and you're running on like capital and runway, like, yeah, of course you're pretty fucked right now. But I don't think that that's strictly for DTC companies. I think that applies to any business just based on bad economics. So I think there's a a temptation to like run DTCs over the coals right now, or rake them over the coals, however the saying goes. It seems to be a trend. And like, you know, they have to play by the same economics of any other business, DTC or otherwise. And so like it didn't really seem to add too much to the conversation.
So my final thought about D2C is that agencies horrendously underserve them. And that's because agencies maybe understand marketing or advertising, but they don't understand business. And what D2Cs need more than any other company is a holistic approach, because there's so many pieces of the puzzle beyond just the ad and the targeting that go into being a successful D2C company, from branding to messaging to value props to website, user experience, checkout flow, offers, so many different pieces. So I think the challenge that agencies are going to have with D2C is, unless they're like a consulting based industry who understands startup and understands startup math and understands growth and understands e-com and user experience and conversion rate optimization, all those pieces, any one of them could be just as important for the positive or negative effects of e-commerce. So that's what they need to look for, someone who really understands e-commerce and D2C holistically. Well, this has been a lot of fun. I hope everyone enjoyed it. I know Ian and I did. If you have any ideas for topics for the next Rantvertising, please put them in the comments and we will tackle them in due time. Talk to you guys soon. Have a good week.